Can you please clap? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a test. It was for synchronization. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but clapping maybe isn't that easy. Some people don't know how to proper clap.
Sure.
I mean, it's your drum head right here.
It's
so
true.
Don't do this.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, or they do it on the 1 and the 3 instead of the 2 and the 4.
Yeah, we are in the 1 and 3 country here.
There you go.
Okay.
Dave Elitch here. I'm on the Level Up tour with my buddies Chris Coleman and Federico Paulovich, and we're here at Riverside Studios in Cologne, Germany for Drumtalk.
So usually I start this off with passion for the instrument, for rhythm, and I switched that question, try to be smart and asked, what do you like when you see other drummers play? But in your case, you probably see money. He has some problems here, he has some problems.
Sure.
I need to talk to that guy.
Sure.
Describe your passion for playing drums. How do you experience and understand the instrument, maybe even from a philosophical perspective?
Yeah, well, I have a passion for playing drums, and then I have a passion for teaching drums, and they're all obviously like related to each other, but they are also separate from each other. So I've been playing since I was 9 or 10, so that's about 30 years. I've been teaching since I was 15, so that's about 25 years. When I am working with someone, especially like people who've been playing for a long time, and especially people who are famous and on these big gigs, I'm basically trying to essentially give their bodies and their minds like a tune-up. It's like you can drive your car, but if you don't change the oil or change the spark plugs or the timing belt, like you're going to have problems. And a lot of these people don't do that. Or they, if you want to continue with the analogy, might go to a mechanic who doesn't necessarily know what he's doing. And then you run into problems. So my whole thing that I do with teaching is trying to get people actionable, well thought out, stress tested information that works in the real world, because I am also a professional drummer and I've played a bunch of big shows, I've played a bunch of small shows, and you can have something that's theoretical and you can have something that's tested in the real world, and everything that I do with people is tested and applied in the real world, so I know it works. It's not hypothetical. So as far as what I like in players, just as a fan or as a drummer, I like people that are aggressive and emote and put emotion into the music. Like someone who's going to make me want to run through a brick wall or flip a table over or light something on fire, like Tony Williams or Phil Collins or Haka or Yogi Horton or any, Mario from Gojira is great, but it also could be someone who doesn't maybe necessarily play heavy music or hit hard. Like Brian Blade also has a huge intensity in his playing. Jay Belleros, Jim Keltner, like it's all about intention, really, like having something to say and how you're saying it and having a certain level of aggressiveness, whether you're actually playing loudly or not. You can play soft and be aggressive too. But for me, it's about like really making a statement.
Put your everything in every hit, like
Exactly.
mean it.
Life or death.
I start the show at 110%. I do have a technique, so I'm not like caveman.
Sure.
But still, it's metal music, and it makes me go into beast mode always by definition. I can't change that. It's hard to change for me.
But that's exactly what I'm saying. Like that's what I want. I don't want someone to be looking like they're doing their taxes when they're playing. That's boring, right? Like I want someone to be emoting. I'd much rather have someone like holding the sticks like hammers and going for it and enjoying themselves and playing musically, rather than like being preoccupied with their technique or their posture or something. That completely defeats the entire purpose. So with the right information and a lot of hard work, you are able to meld the two, so where you can do that, and then you can do that even easier than you were before, and maybe hopefully even with more intensity. And then you get done playing a show and you're like, man, I could play a whole other show. You're not like, oh my God, my neck or my back, right? That's the purpose. People people don't really understand, or technique has gotten a bad name because a lot of people miss the point of it. The point of it is to be able to play what you can play just much easier and with longevity, and to not hurt yourself. That's why we're doing this, especially if you're hitting hard and playing heavy music, it's even more important.
How do you balance technical proficiency and the physical demands of drumming with musicality and emotional expression in your drumming? Because we were talking about exactly that.
Yeah, it's a tool, and it takes a lot of hard work. I mean, we're essentially talking about changing muscle memory. And changing your muscle memory is literally the hardest thing you can do as a human being. So that takes time, and it takes time sort of in the laboratory, in the practice room, in the shed by yourself, working on things. And then it also takes time in real world application, in the sort of heat of battle, as we say, to apply the things. So it takes time. The work we're doing in the studio, sort of out of context, you can't just go and play a gig the next day and all of a sudden you're doing all the things. It's very complicated, and it takes time to be able to apply all these things. It takes weeks, months, maybe even years sometimes. So I was texting with a friend of mine this morning, and he said, I thank God I had these 2.5 months off of playing, because he had actually injured himself. He was like, it was a blessing in disguise, because I did all the stuff you told me to do, and I had 2.5 months to just practice. So now that I'm back on tour, I can do the stuff without thinking about it. So it is very difficult when you're trying to do the stuff that I do with so many pros and they're on tour all the time. It's difficult, but you do need to also do that as well. It's a balancing act. So the best advice I can give people is to just be really patient and to just let things sink in as they will over time. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's the same thing as like changing a golf swing. It takes a lot of repetition, and it takes a lot of time. But ultimately, it's if the approach makes sense and is in tune with how things function universally, then you're going to be doing the same thing or better than what you were doing with less effort. And it's going to feel better. That's the whole point. You should be able to get what you've been doing previously with much less effort.
What was your initial motivation when you started drumming, and what defines your drumming style now? Still something left from back in the day, or did you totally change?
My initial motivation, it's interesting. People ask you all the time when you got started the drums found me, really, meaning I was sleeping over at a friend's house when I was 9 or 10, and he's like, hey, I have a drum lesson in the morning. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know, I guess I'll check it out. And then they were like, do you want to give it a shot? I was like, yeah, okay. And I took a lesson, and it just seemed to sort of make sense. And so I started taking lessons, and it was, I just had a knack for it. And it was at that point in my life, it was very important to have structure and positive feedback. So it was very nice to have something where I go, oh, okay, I work on this, and then I can do this now. And it was very nice to have that structure of like, I practice, and then I have a new skill that I can do. And I got sort of addicted to that. And there's also something about this instrument that's very special, that we can just like go in and just literally like beat the shit out of something, as opposed to like a flute or even a guitar or something, where like drums, it's just by nature and can be a very aggressive instrument. It doesn't have to, but using movement also helps you process emotions, according to a lot of research. So it's also very cathartic. Even if you just had a bad day at school and you come into your garage, you're like, and that can be very helpful for someone, especially like teenagers, just being a teenager in the way the world is, So I remember when I was really young, definitely before I started playing drums, I had this little jukebox radio, and I would play, Phil Collins or Genesis cassette tapes when I was really young, and when it was really sort of he has such a unique voice, and some of that music is actually kind of like creepy. And I remember it had like a big effect on me when I was younger. And my dad was always playing jazz and swing around the house and would take me to see jazz all the time. And then I got into, heavier stuff when I was maybe 14, 15, 16. So it was always like all over the place. Like I would listen to Max Roach, and then I'd listen to Phil Collins, and then I'd listen to Meshuggah or Tool or something, or Deftones. So, and I grew up playing jazz as well. So it was always this interesting sort of balancing act of trying to do not trying, but like wanting also genuinely to play all these different styles, because I listened to all these different styles. So, but in my heart of hearts, like I love playing heavier, I wouldn't say pop, but like Daughters of Mara, my own band, is kind of like, I guess you could call it new metal. It's like late 90s, early 2000s. Sometimes it's screaming, sometimes it's singing. So, but at the same time, like, or when I was doing Kill or Be Killed or the Mars Volta stuff, it's like I'm able to find, because I like so many different styles of music and I like playing so many different styles of music, I'm able to find something in every gig I've done, even though they're all very different, that I can attach to musically. So do I like playing certain styles of music more than others? Sure. But like when I was over here a couple of years ago playing with Weezer, like there's a bunch of songs that I can like really get into emotionally, just like there were songs with Miley or M83 that I could also, or 1975, they're all very pop, that I could also get into. So it's just about finding whatever element emotionally that you can latch onto that makes you feel something.
So it sounds like there are many Daves in you, and you need to get this out.
Yeah.
And drums is the perfect thing for sports, energy, and all the creative things you have. So actually, it sounds like the intention never really changed.
It's funny, you obviously have intentions and directions, but sometimes you don't really think about these things in a specific way until someone asks you point blank, right? So, I mean, I always wanted to play all styles of music. So that was a very specific goal that I had when I was 14 reading Modern Drummer, and I was like, I'm going to do this for a living. I was like, I want to do everything. I talk about this in these masterclasses. I talk about this when I teach people. It's like, you have to have goals. And when I was 14, I was like, I'm going to teach equally as much as playing professionally. I wanted to do both of them. I'm going to play big film scores, sight reading with people. I'm going to do huge records in big studios. I'm going to do big stadium tours. I'm going to teach my contemporaries. I'm going to play in bands. I'm going to play on pop tours. I'm going to play in punk bars where people like throwing bottles at me. Like everything that I wanted to do, it all just kind of unfolded in front of me, and I've worked towards those things specifically. So when I was doing Antemasque and Kill or Be Killed at the same time, one's like garage punk rock, and the other one's like metal. And I was also learning the Miley Cyrus set at the same time. And so I go and do those records, and then I'm on tour with Miley. And I remember seeing on these metal forums, like Metal Sucks or whatever, all these metal guys were like, "Who's guys playing with Miley? Like, lame." And they like, metal guys like didn't get it that you can be multifaceted. And I was like, awesome. Like, I love that, that people don't get it. So that exactly specifically was a goal of mine. Like I was very concerned after I did the Mars Volta of people pigeonholing me as like a prog rock guy. I was very scared of that because that's not who I am. So yeah, I contain multitudes as people say. So I want to do all sorts of things because I like all sorts of music. And if I can help artists affect people emotionally, or if I can do that by myself, great. That's really what we're here to do, I think.
So in drumming, it's crucial to be aware of what you're doing. Listening to recordings and watching videos or using a mirror can help to see and hear what you're actually doing, which is very important. And this isn't always easy, as some things are hard to analyze. And maybe you don't even notice what your pinky is doing because you're paying attention to something totally different. So what works for one drummer might not work for another drummer. You can analyze other drummers, even professionals, and give them good advice. How did you develop this skill?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Like, how is it that you do what you do? Because I have an ability which is called having a trait of being highly sensitive. So there's a book called The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron that she wrote in the 90s. And that was a book that I read and had a very visceral experience. I read the first 10 pages and I was like, oh my God, this is me. So basically, if someone, whether it's my mirror neurons or it's the way my body is developed through nature or nurture or some sort of combination, I can feel what is going on in someone else's body as I'm working with them. So I can obviously see what's going on, but I can also feel a level of tension that they're holding in their body and where they're holding it. So many times when people are working with me, either in real life or in Zoom, they constantly go, oh my God, how did you know I did that? Like, and it was, well, or how did you see that? And I'm like, well, it's not necessarily me seeing as much as it is me feeling what's going on in your body. And that's what I'm doing in these workshops for this Level Up tour. So, and most other people do feel these things. They just feel them unconsciously. It doesn't register in the conscious mind or nervous system. So I'm able to read people very quickly, whereas most people are not. Certainly drummers are not able to do that. But Alexander Technique teachers, where I've been studying Alexander Technique for a few years now, and I have 4 different teachers myself right now, and each one of them has this capacity. There's a lot. You were saying, like, talking about people can watch themselves and use mirrors or, film themselves or whatever. And the problem is we're all trapped in a self-contained cyclical loop where we have social media and we're almost trapped in a house of mirrors, or we are trapped in a house of mirrors where we don't know, not only do we not know what we're doing physically and mentally, but we don't know what to do. So meaning finding good, reliable, tested information these days is the problem of our time. Nothing is vetted anymore. Anyone can make a video, anyone can make a podcast, anyone can do anything. And that's cool in certain ways, but it's also not cool in a lot of ways. So you have all of these people on the internet putting up videos of whatever topic. This doesn't concern just drumming. Certainly people can
I wish it was.
Yeah. So it's a very dangerous time, and you have to stress test things and make sure you're getting good, reliable information, and then test that information and make sure it actually makes sense and actually is what you think it is. And that's not easy. And that's really the service that I provide is going, hey, look, I'm not a breathing expert, but I'm at least going to give you reliable foundational information that is stress tested and proven. And I'm going to at least send you off in the right direction. If you want to go deeper than that, check out these guys and you can really go deep in that direction, or sports massage or any of the things I do. So it's about having a holistic, zoomed out approach that is plugged into the universal use of the body and the mind, no matter what we're doing with the body and the mind, whether that's football or fencing or boxing or whatever. And unfortunately, the way the drum set has been taught, it's not that. It's unfortunately has been taught in the context of the instrument. And the problem is this instrument is counterintuitive. So you get people teaching you for the last 60 years, mostly, things that make sense on the surface in the context of the instrument. But then when you zoom out and think holistically, macroscopically, and you start checking out other ways to use the body, it doesn't make sense anymore. So basically what I do is essentially, like, most of the times the opposite of the way most people are taught. So I get a lot of pushback from people, and I bum out a lot of other teachers and a lot of people, because I go, hey, look, like, I'm sure you mean well, but like everything you've been doing is like backwards. People either take what I do and they test it out and they go, oh, wow, yeah. Like they're courageous enough to actually stress test what they've been doing. And then they go, oh shit, you're right. What I've been doing actually doesn't work comparatively. But a lot of people have invested their careers in an approach that doesn't work very well, and they're not courageous enough to test that. So they just would rather just keep doing that. There's a spectrum here, right? So there's things that people are doing where I'm like, yeah, maybe that's not the best way to do this, but it might not be that big of a deal. It might be like a preference. And then there are things that are wildly out of sync with how the body and the mind work, and they're actually dangerous. That's why with both of my courses, Staying Out of Your Own Way and Getting Out of Your Own Way, I make them living, breathing documents. So as I continue to study and stress test things, I go, oh, I have a better way to teach that now. This might not be like wrong, but I definitely have a better way to do that now. Now, with that said, I talk about breathing and getting out of your own way, and I have done 2 updates so that course is on its 3rd version right now. And when I did the breathing meditation stuff in the first version, I hadn't studied breathing a lot, and my breathing in that first version was, I don't say right or wrong a lot, it was wrong. It's wrong. So when I started doing research about breathing and reading all these books and watching all these videos and courses and stuff, I was like, uh-oh. I got to fix this. And then I updated the course and I left the old footage of me in there going, hey, look, what I was doing, not good. Sorry. So that's what I say all the time is like, hey, I'm willing to constantly do that with everything I'm doing because you have a responsibility as an educator. And, that doesn't happen to me very often, but I'm still human, but at least I'll go back and fix things. Right? Whereas if you have a lot of people just going, well, this is the train I've been on for 30, 40 years, and they don't want to look at themselves in the mirror and go, ooh, it's like maybe I've been saying that the sun revolves around the earth. Some people can't face that. I get that in a certain way, but at the same time, we have a responsibility. So I'm constantly going, is there a way I can do this better? And that's why I update both of these courses. And that's why I still study too. We were talking about posture and breathing in there, and there's a certain way I used to talk about it. And then I took some lessons a few months ago with this guy, Bob Britton in San Francisco. And I was like, that's a way better way to teach it. So I do that now. It's not like what I was doing was wrong, but like this way is better. Whatever makes the light bulb go on easier for people, whatever makes them go, oh, wow. I had one of the guys walk up to me after the masterclass here, and he was like, just to let you know, I'm like, I can't believe how relaxed I feel. I can't believe how much tension I'm letting go of. This is crazy. Wow. Human beings are incredibly resilient. We're unbelievable creatures, for better or worse. We can survive a lot, but we don't want to make things harder than we need to be.
Yeah, but sometimes you think that changing everything or many things is so much work. It's more comfortable to stay on the wrong train because you don't want to spend time and effort to go on the right one. And then at least you know it.
Well, so with drumming, a lot of people, especially heavy drummers, a lot of drummers bury the beater into the bass drum head, like almost everyone. And so that's one thing that I don't do that I have to fix with a lot of professionals. And there have been people who go, yeah, it's just too hard. Like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, okay, like this is up to you, because changing your muscle memory is the hardest thing you can do as a human being. It literally is. So I always talk about anecdotally this Tiger Woods story where if you watch his documentary, I can't remember which one it was, and he talks about being, halfway through his career and he gets a new swing coach. And he's like, oh man, like I can be even better. And so he changes his swing. He puts on 15 pounds of muscle, starts working out, and he sucks. He sucks for like a year, and he has to hit like a few thousand balls. And all of his friends are like, dude, what are you doing? Like you were already the best. Like you're hitting the ball in the sand traps now. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, yeah, I know I can be better though. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it took him a few thousand balls and like a year. And then once he got the hang of it, it's better than he ever was. But most people aren't willing to do that. They're not willing to put the work in because it's really hard. So again, like all the guys that I've taught were professionals, and they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and they're still bearing the beater, and they go, yeah, I've had a good career doing this. I don't really feel like fixing it. I'm
Totally.
like, whatever, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to sit here and be like, that's wrong. It's not wrong. I don't like to say right or wrong. It's not wrong. It's just you're using an insane amount of energy to do that, and you're pulling a huge emergency brake with several different parts of your body, and you're choking the drum. So it's like I always say, a lot of this stuff, it's you're getting 8 miles to the gallon instead of 40. That's really what we're doing. We're trying to give you a tune-up. Like if you've been driving your car around and the timing's off or your spark plug's out, and you get on the freeway and your car's like, and then you get it all tuned up, you get on the freeway and you floor it and you're like, oh my God. Because you're not used to all that power, effortless power. That's all we're doing. It's a lot easier to tune up a car than it is a human being, though. That's the issue.
What have you learned in return from teaching both professionals as well as unexperienced drummers?
Well, it's such a cliche of being like, I learn just as much from my students as they learn from me, right? But if you're open to that, you really do learn a lot. And for me, it's about communicating and helping people. And you have to be open to people telling you what they need and what the best way to help them is. And sometimes my first way to help someone is not the best for that person. So I have to go, okay, that doesn't make sense. Let me try this. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Let me try this. So it's being able to basically speak 4 or 5 different languages essentially, and be like, okay, well, I need to have many different forms of communication in order to get the light bulb to go on, to get the light to flash in their eyes and to make things make sense. So essentially, like, the biggest thing I've learned is like different styles of communication. Some people need to have like really be driven, some people need like a taskmaster, I used to be a lot more of a hard ass on people. Like if someone came in and they didn't practice, I'd be like, all right, well, like, let's just do it again. Like, like wasting both of our time. Like, I already know how to do this. So like, let's just do it again, But these days I'm like, hey, look, like life gets in the way. Like, I get it, like you were sick or you had some family stuff, whatever, So I'm a lot more laid back or lenient with people now, because life happens, and I think you have to be sensitive to that. But if someone maybe is younger and shows quite a bit of talent and is like not putting it in, yeah, I'll still be a hard ass. But, again, at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun. So like, I don't want, if I was studying with someone, I wouldn't want someone to be a hard ass for me. But I think if I was younger, I could have needed it. So anyway, I guess I've just gotten softer as I've gotten older, which I think is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I've had some students from my older teacher. He taught me for 12 years or
Mhm.
even longer. He's a jazz guy. No metal at all, but that was a good thing because the metal came from inside of me
Mhm.
and wasn't directed so
Sure.
much. So I took over some of his students from time to time. And I realized that they are all doing the same pretty much. They're trying to read the music, simple grooves, but none of them could sing the groove. It was simple stuff. And you'd be like, okay, I get it. You read this, but don't look there. Tell me what the groove is. Just make me move. None of those students could do that. I was kind of like thrown off by that because what are you guys doing here? Why are you here? If not for that.
It's a very good point. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of teachers who, many of them, not all of them, but many of them go to university and they get given an approach, a pedagogical approach of like, you're going to work out of these books and do these exercises. And then they just take everything from college and then that's what they teach. And they just do that forever. What happens is like, they're giving the same thing to everyone. And it's like, that's not good. You should be able to tailor make what you're doing for each, because every person has different needs. So when someone comes in to study with me, I say, come in and give me 2, maybe 3 goals or topics that you want to discuss or work on. And those can be different with every single person. So that's an issue. And then the other issue is like, you know, a lot of people go to school and they study jazz or classical, but they actually want to play drum set, like pop music or metal or whatever. They end up studying with someone who teaches jazz. And I grew up playing jazz. I love jazz. But if someone only plays jazz and you want to play metal, there's not really a whole lot that person's going to be able to show you. There'll be things that they'll be able to show you that are challenging. But again, is that the best way to spend your time? The thing I have to say all the time, frequently to people is like, just because something's difficult doesn't mean it's worth practicing. And drummers tend to be such dorks. They practice so much nonsense that's difficult, but is it useful? You know, like, and I did that too when I was younger. I practiced double strokes on my feet when I was 14. Spent so much time doing that in my mom's garage. When I was 4, never used it. Thankfully, I got old enough and I was like, what am I doing? This is a huge waste of time. Spending all this time playing double strokes on my feet, and I haven't worked on all this other stuff I'm actually going to use, which is a problem. You know? So drummers also think they need to be everything to everyone, and we don't. You have to pick a lane.
No, I've decided pretty early on that I won't do the doubles on the kicks because for me it distorts the purpose of this. Because it's more like operating a machine.
Yeah.
And it's not blasting anymore.
You have to have triggers. It doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I mean, triggers discussion aside,
Yeah.
still it doesn't feel right to me.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
I can't get as fast as all the 250, 260 guys. Impossible with my technique, but it's a technique I need to play because otherwise it doesn't make me really happy.
Well, because you're going for a big sound, right? You're going for that thing you were saying, like just like, you know, it gives me that thing.
And even the feeling in my body, that comes before sound.
Yeah, reverberating in the body. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. You know, the purpose of this instrument is not to play as fast as you can possibly play. It's not to be ambidextrous with not just your hands, but your feet or all 4 limbs. That's not the purpose. We're not supposed to be an octopus. The purpose of this instrument is to play music. But unfortunately, especially in these sort of extreme metal vein, people get lost in the weeds and they get so obsessed with playing as fast as possible because that's one of the only things that you can point at. This is music. You know, music is subjective, right? Somebody can sit down and play and you go, yeah, I like that guy. And another person can be like, I don't like that guy. The thing with playing really fast is that's subjective. That's a tempo. You're playing at 270. No one can take that away from you or argue with you. You're playing it at, right? Just like odd time signatures. You're playing in a 13/16. Okay. Does it sound good? What's happening musically? Right? And again, I'm saying all this stuff because I was trapped in that mode of thinking when I was young. When I was young and immature. And I think it's important to be well-rounded and check out other styles of music and get your head out of the sand and get out of that, because that's not the point of this stuff. You know, it's like, yeah, we need people to push boundaries, but at a certain point you get so fast where it will literally just turn into a pitch, right? It's like, we're going to get to a point where it just goes, it's going to be a pitch. It's like, what's the point? You know, like does that groove? The reason why Meshuggah works is because it's funky. And there's a million copycat bands out there, and none of them sound like Meshuggah as hard as they try because it doesn't groove. That's what makes Pantera and Meshuggah and like Gojira special, is it grooves. It's funky. It has like a feel to it. And the faster you play, the more space you're taking up. So the less space there is in between the notes, so the less feel there's going to be. Sorry. That's a fact, you know? Like feel comes from space. And if you're chopping up everything, there's no feel left, right? That's why, like, you listen to Back in Black and everyone's like, because there's space.
Agree to disagree. In Dirk Verburen's case, he can make the blast beat swing like hell, and it's still super fast, super many notes, but the dynamics make it so groovy that it's still working. Not each and every drummer can do this. In his case, I was like, why is it still funky, groovy, and it's like 240 or something?
Well, yeah, I think Dirk's great. And my guess is he's able to play that stuff so cleanly that they don't have to edit it very much. So it has like a natural swing to it. That obscure French band, that Yurkun, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, the record's called like Occult Medicine. It's a great record. He's destroying on that record. And he plays like not fast by today's standards because it's an older record, but like it sounds real. And like I tend to not really like blast beats, musically speaking, but I can listen to that record and I'm like, yeah, this has a thing to it because it's real. Or like, even though it's all triggered, that old Decapitated record with Vitek, right? That Polish guy who died when he was super young. Spacing on the name of the record now, but you can hear it's like that Alesis trigger sound, but it's at least like moving around a little bit, you know, so it's like real still in a way. I think so much of this discussion is really more about technology and just people everything being super edited, really. But like Dirk or like obviously Gene Hoglan, they're able to play fast and have it swing still because they're physically able to actually do it, so they don't have to have it edited, and they're able to hit hard, like hard enough that they don't need triggers. So I think that's the distinction with those guys versus a lot of other guys. And they're so proficient at it, it's effortless. And again, if you're effortless and relaxed, Gene being the supreme example of that, like it's gonna feel good. Like I saw him play with strapping a bunch of times a long time ago, and I was just like he looks like he's like, he could be like eating dinner. Like he's just like, whatever, this is so easy for me, you know? And that's why it felt good, right? Yeah, amazing.
In drumming, it's important to know how to use splash cymbals and toms effectively. It's like very distinct sounds, not like the time givers, but it's like different colors, it's accents, it's ideas, it's creativity. Choosing the right moment and intention for these instruments is crucial. Otherwise, they might just seem like random additions without purpose. They should be used as musical connections that fit within the song structure. Can you explain how you use these elements?
Sure. Also, things are in and out of fashion over time, right? So if I hang out with like singer-songwriter, hipster kind of guys in LA, definitely for a long time, splash cymbals were like not cool, you know, and like having a bunch of toms was like not cool, right? I would have like a splash cymbal or something, and a friend of mine who, you know, plays like vintage drums, low tune with towels on them, would come over and be like, oh, cool splash cymbal, right? So, but then you look at, you know, Stuart Copeland back in the day with the Police, or Manu Katché with Peter Gabriel, right? There's a lot of like older examples you can think of where people use splashes. It was, or Vinny, you know. It's really that way with anything. It's you're really talking about taste. Really talking about having good taste.
Splash cymbal was just an example for that, for toms, for roto toms, whatever.
Yeah.
What different color you add to your drum kit that stands out.
Well, a lot of times what I see is I see people adding so many different colors to their drum kit to make up for their lack of creativity or vocabulary. That is definitely not all the time, but there's one guy who has or several guys who have gigantic drum sets who play in a certain progressive band, who play sort of the same thing over and over again, but then just like move their hands around to the 47 different things they have, and it ends up sounding different, as opposed to having not a lot of colors to paint with, right? And you figure something out on a 4-piece kit, right?
This is exactly what I meant with the purpose and the right idea at the right spot.
Well, is it a vehicle for expression, or is it a crutch? Is it a handicap, right? So Terry Bozzio, for example, playing these big, giant, crazy drum kit that he did solo concerts on forever. That is a perfect example of someone who played Frank Zappa, Missing Persons, and played relatively small kits or like interesting, even electronic kits, right? Or whatever. He had to do whatever he had to do in those musical settings. But my point is he was playing music first and foremost, right? And also, like, you can't get more different than Frank Zappa and Missing Persons, right? You have crazy, crazy complicated music, almost like neoclassical music at times. And then you have 80s synth wave wearing makeup, like triggers, like, you know, can't get more different. So my point is, like, he had a foundation in playing music, good music. And then he was like, I'm going to play this giant, crazy drum kit and essentially accompany myself. And so when you see that drum kit, you're like, this is nuts. But the way he did it was so musical. So I spent hours watching videos of him when I was a kid. And he's one of my favorite drummers because at the end of the day, it was musical. And then you can have these guys I was talking about who have giant drum kits, and it's not that. They either want to have a giant drum kit or they're, again, making up for their lack of vocabulary. Whereas Terry, everything he put up there, he used, and it was for a specific reason. For me, when I'm playing, I generally have two main rigs at my studio. I teach. I have a 4-piece kit with a ride and a crash and hats. And then I have a 6-piece kit, 2 rack toms, 2 floor toms, and then I have like toys on it. I have like some nano hats. I have a splash. I have a china. I have a stack. You know, like, so like I have a kit that's very simple, and I have a kit that has like a few extra toys on it. Nothing crazy. But you know, if I'm doing like solo drum clinics or something, or drum videos, it's nice to have all those extra toys extra colors to sort of paint with. But, you know, like when I was doing Antemasque, I just played a 4-piece kit, and I had to come up with all sorts of parts with just that. And so it's a challenge in a way, but it's almost like external versus internal in a way. Not a perfect analogy, but like I notice a lot of people these days like dyeing their hair crazy colors and or getting tattoos or piercings or getting a new wardrobe or whatever, and changing themselves externally instead of just doing the actual real hard internal work. There's a lot of people I see who are like, oh, my hair is pink now. And it's just like, it's a substitute for actually doing the real work. You know, I don't want to do the hard work to change myself internally. So I'm just going to like dye my hair. A lot of these things I'm saying may sound harsh, but it comes from my own growth and my own knowledge of myself. And that comes from me having a mohawk and stripes in my beard, wanting to be Vinnie Paul when I was 15, dyeing my hair all these crazy colors because I wanted to be unique and I wanted to say something, but I had nothing to say because I was 15. I didn't know shit. So I used those external ways to be different, right? I mean, that's like, thank God I never got any tattoos. You know, having no tattoos is like the new tattoo, right? A lot of this stuff that I'm saying, it's like from my own growth. Right? Like, I'm not saying like, I'm not judging people. I'm just like basically trying to get in a time capsule and go back to my younger self and go, hey dude, like maybe there's better ways you can spend your time. That's all I'm trying to do.
Would you say that the drumstick should be an extension of the human body, meaning it sort of disappears while you are playing? Or should you be aware of this tool to fully utilize all the possibilities it can provide? Or is that question totally stupid and doesn't make any sense?
No, it's a good question. I mean, you have to do the latter to do the former. You have to be very aware of what it is and do the work so you can forget it, so it can disappear. But very much, even if you have no idea what you're doing, even if you've never played drums before and you hold a drumstick, it immediately becomes an extension of your nervous system. That's how the brain works, that's how the nervous system works, that's how the body works. So even if you have no idea what you're doing, the mind-body unity views the drumstick as a literal extension of the body. Now, how we're able to use that in context, it's funny, in getting out of your own way, I say technique should be the sort of invisible hand that guides you. You should work really hard on this stuff so that you don't think about it anymore. That's the point. But one doesn't come without the other, right? So the way that this stuff works is you practice, and then when you're in the heat of battle, it just happens. Again, it's like sports psychology, right? If you're playing golf and you know all the stuff, like that you've thought about all the million different things you have to think about with a golf swing, but if you get up to the tee and you're thinking about how to swing the golf club, you're screwed. You have to do it so much to where it just happens, right? So like people who are playing tennis and they think about what they're doing physically, you're now using a different part of your brain, you're going to make a mistake. So they're very much related, but the goal is to have it practice so much that it just happens. And also, by the way, to get to a point where you don't need to ever practice this stuff again. I don't ever think about how I'm using myself when I'm playing, ever, because I worked on it a long time ago, and this is just how I play now, right? Which is the goal, really.
It works for me doing that, what you just described, but I also love to really feel sometimes, okay, what's happening now? Like thinking about, what about my toe? And
yeah,
you
but
can activate it.
I think what you're really saying is going from being in the moment to actually checking in with yourself and being present.
Yeah.
Which are two different but related things. And also you can be so in the moment and so present that everything becomes an extension and time slows down and you're in the matrix. And that's really what we're going for at the end of the day with this stuff. It's not the purpose, but it's really nice when it happens. So much of this work is being as present as possible. So if you're playing a show and you start going, oh, I want to feel my toe. The problem is when that happens a lot of times is you then actually take yourself out of the present moment and then you make a mistake, as opposed to going, I'm holding my breath. Let me just breathe. That can help you center yourself. So the same thing can kind of help or hurt you depending on the context, like this book, The Inner Game of Tennis, I have everyone read. There's a lot of strategies to be present when you are getting distracted, right? So meaning like if you're playing and you're like, oh man, I screwed up the chorus in the last song, right? You start kind of doing that thing. You go, okay, hold on. Let me just like look at the logo on the sticks. And just like that'll just whatever you, or like if you're playing tennis, like the whop of the ball, the sound, or like the feel of the rim shot, like whatever you need to like bring you back to that present moment. Like a lot of this stuff, it depends on the context, but one is definitely related to the other. It's like what I talk about in my courses when I tell people to skip rope for warming up. You have to inhabit this level of what I call detached focus. If you're skipping rope and you think about skipping rope, you're going to hit your feet. If you're skipping rope and you space out too much, you're going to hit your feet, right? If you're playing drums and you think about playing drums, you're going to make a mistake. If you space out too much, you're going to make a mistake. So you have to be focused, but not too focused. It's a razor's edge to walk. So, and that's why pop gigs can make you crazy, because you have to play most of them. You have to play the same exact thing every night, note for note. And sometimes you've done it so many times, you don't even know what your name is anymore. And then you start spacing out and then it's like a real problem. And a lot of my clinics, I play this Miley song, Adore You, which is the same 2-bar groove for 4 minutes. And every time I get done, it's funny. Most people are like, wow, that was amazing. But I'm sure there are a few people that were like boring, and it's like, because they don't understand how difficult that actually is. You have to be like really focused. Whatever you want, whatever you think is going to be the most interesting. I mean, you're asking good questions.
It's super interesting. I'm looking at my stuff and I'm like, yeah, man, you killed it, bro. No, let's talk about rules. Rules can spoil everything, but can challenge you immensely on a creative level if it's the right rules. Because I had wrong rules in my rehearsal space. We had a crazy guitar player and he made the rules like 6:45 jamming, 7 feeling free telling jokes, 7:15 nobody says something.
It's very German.
No, it's totally insane. he's a Muay Thai Dan master, super sports guy, and he couldn't deal with us younglings like playing. Just can't play. Like Crimson. What about this? And he was like, He was older than us, so wrong rules. But what frameworks are driving you creativity, and what has a fun and energy spoiling impact on your playing?
When I give these master classes like we're doing here, or clinics, or whatever. I mean, even when I'm teaching privately, what I say is like, look, I have two rules, right? One, there are no stupid questions, so I'll generally be able to figure out if you're confused. And I'll catch it. But if you're confused, let me know. And again, like I'll explain something until you get it, right? And the other rule is just don't play when I'm talking, because then I'll get distracted and forget what I'm talking about. So those are the only like rules I have. So many people, again, misinterpret the technique stuff. And I always tell the story of I taught someone a very long time ago, and they said, I went to go see this guy play at the Whiskey on Sunset, and like, oh my God, his fulcrum was just terrible. His grip was awful after we started doing the right grip, right? And I was like, okay, like what did he sound like? Like what did the band sound like? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I was like, well, you're missing the whole point of everything. I would much rather have someone whose grip is all screwed up and like in the moment and playing, rather than you worrying. It defeats the purpose entirely, right? Or like when we're talking about a lot of the physical approach, because what I do is so different from other drummers and other drum teachers, although it's in line holistically with the universe. So many people will go like, oh yeah, this is wrong or this is right. And I'm like, no, like, let's not use those words. Like this is more or less healthy or more or less efficient, right?
Do you know Gentle Giant?
Not well, but yes.
So they had a drummer. Watching him play is more like a train wreck from the outside. It looks super uncomfortable. It's posture, everything. But isn't he the perfect fit for that weird music? And I don't want to have it any other way than him playing with his dorky moves, and he's playing great.
Agreed.
It's awesome.
Agreed. Keith Moon could barely play drums. Like, I don't even know if I would consider him a drummer, but you watch him with the Who and you're like, this is fucking awesome, because it's all emotion, right? It was constantly falling apart or on the verge of falling apart, but it's exciting and there's emotion there, and he really like cared, ironically, a lot more than most people. So like, was he a good drummer? Like, no way. But there was a thing there, as opposed to someone who's like very studious and et cetera, and kind of a nerd, and it doesn't really feel like anything. I mean, there's plenty of, I don't want to like call people out or throw people under the bus, but there's plenty of examples of bands who have guys who were like in the band, and then they, leave the band or get fired or die or whatever, and they get someone else who's a quote unquote better drummer, and then the vibe's gone. I remember I was talking to Dave King, a good friend of mine from the Bad Plus, years ago, and I was talking about this other group, and I was like, oh man, it's so great they got this drummer playing with him now, because he's incredible. And he was like, yeah, really? It's like, I really liked it with the old drummer. And the old drummer, like, again, like could kind of barely play and always like stayed out of the way. And then I was like, and then I went back and listened with a new perspective, and I was like, oh my God, he's totally right. Like when you step back and think about the music, the guy who was staying out of the way and barely playing and didn't have the chops was way better musically than the guy who was like incredible, much better. So
there's this rule thing on King Crimson on the Beat record. Bill Bruford had to play without cymbals.
Right.
And that's a new rule, and it's a creative one. It challenges you, as opposed to the rules that were in my rehearsal space, which are just crap and fun spoiling and what have you. So this is why I asked, what rules help you?
Yeah. Well, I think you're talking about rules that are helpful versus harmful, right? And instead of going, don't do this, you can't do this, like maybe try this instead. It's like, instead of saying no to a lot of things, you're saying yes to the possibilities, right? So you're talking more about like a Brian Eno, oblique strategies sensibility, right? Like pulling those cards out and having some sort of rule and being like, oh, okay, like It's a million different rules that you can use that are prompts essentially, which are supposed to help your creativity, not hinder it. But also it's about who's telling you the rules. Like there's a Japanese thing where it's like, oh, you can only paint with 3 colors. So, if someone if the teacher, let's say an art teacher is a dick, telling that to you in a way that feels constrictive, that's not going to be helpful, versus someone is like, hey, why don't you try and paint with 3 colors and see what happens? That's a lot more like the Bill Bruford playing with no symbols kind of thing, right? So it depends which lens you're looking at it through and who's giving you the instruction, right?
But were there any rules that you came up with to spice it up for you?
I'm always trying to, in terms of playing music or playing original music or being in bands, I'm always just trying to do whatever's going to be the best thing musically at that moment in time. And if that's me laying out entirely, great. That's going to make when the music comes back in have that much more of an impact, great. I'd rather do that. So I just have to do whatever it is that I have to do in that context to make the music have as much of an emotional impact on the listener as possible. So I've never really done anything like that radical, So it's a scale. If you get too out there, it becomes a bad rule, right? Sometimes.
How do you perceive the mind-body connection when you play drums? Do you have any specific mental practices or mindfulness techniques that enhance your performance?
Yeah, well, I was just listening to this podcast with Ellen Langer, who's a Harvard neuropsychologist. I should know that. Anyway, she's been doing like these really interesting psychological studies for 35 years at Harvard. And she was saying like the mind-body connection is not a good term, even though everyone says that. It's actually mind-body unity, because there is no separation between the two. And that's one of the things that I like about Alexander Technique so much, is that it's based on that premise. There is no separation between the mind and the body. They're one unit working together, right? So I think when we're talking about that, what we're essentially saying really is being embodied and being present and being sort of connected with ourselves and grounded, because in this world with social media and everything going on and phones and every technology in this day and age, we're just constantly disconnected and disembodied from ourselves. So developing the ability to be present and embodied. So whether that's breathing techniques, whether that's meditation, whether that's both of those things at the same time, whether that's just going in a sensory deprivation tank and not being with anything for 2 hours, whatever it is, going and walking in nature, whatever it is that helps you, But for me, that skipping rope thing is a really good thing to do that, because it really brings everything together and forces you to be present.
All of a sudden I have this connection to one movie I've seen. It's called The Tenant. It's about mental problems of a person. And in one scene he says, if I cut off my finger, I say this is my finger and this is me. If I cut off my arm, you get the idea. But what if I cut off my head? Why is it that the head thinks it is I and the rest is just stuff underneath?
I think it's a very, very old evolutionary way of programming that we needed to survive. We needed eons ago, hundreds of millions of years ago, we needed to be able to differentiate our bodies from the external world. Otherwise, you're going to get killed pretty quickly if you can't tell the difference between your hand and the mouth of a tiger, right? So being like one with everything is like cool if you're doing psychedelics, but like if you're needing to survive in the real world, it's not a good thing.
Watch your head.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just very old programming that we do still need. It's like someone who can't feel pain. Like that's actually really dangerous. Like you think, oh wow, that seems like kind of cool. You can't really get hurt, but then it's like really dangerous. That person could break their leg and be walking around on a broken leg or get an infection or something. It could get really, really messy really quickly. So that's why meditation and like that Sam Harris Waking Up app, which I'm a big fan of, he talks a lot about these concepts and these ideas of self and other and I and consciousness. And if you feel like you're behind your sense of yourself is behind your face. Right? That's all very old neurological programming just to survive. Hey, this is Dave Elitch with Drumtalk. If you want to learn more, you can hit me up at daveelitch.com or check out my Instagram. Happy to help you with whatever you need.
Thank you,
Does that work?
sir.
Cool.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, great.